Okay, so now I introduced what I was going to do about this unified super learning program. And first of all, I guess I have to introduce the basic fundamental building blocks of how these things are going to be organized in typical high school first and second year level. So first, let me introduce you what the math is fundamentally consisting of. This doesn't simply apply to the high school. It also applies to college level or junior high as well to a certain extent. So when you talk about the math will be pretty much consist of three give and take, three disciplines. One is algebra. Algebra is, you know, what you deal with, plus, minus, multiplication, division, exponent, etc., and equation, that kind of stuff. Yes? And when you talk about another one is geometry. Geometry is when you talk about circle, triangle, straight line, curves, shapes. All these things belong to the category of geometry. And the third one is a little bit beyond this scope, and the give and take in the college or beyond, they usually call it analysis. At this stage, without delving too much into it, I'll simply say this is basically extension of calculus. You usually learn in second, third year in high school or something like that, depending on where you're from. And for us, it's going to be largely focusing on how to deal with equation. And the equations are what's unifying both geometry and algebra. Okay? And how about physics? The history of physics has been pretty much parallel to the history of math. They've been developing to a large chunk of their history is kind of converged together and they're parallel to each other to a large extent. Although in 20th century, second half of 20th century, things have changed a little bit. So when you talk about physics, physics will be a more basic level. There is something called the mechanics, which is like a billiard ball banging to each other, whatever, sliding down, etc., dealing with the energy, force, things like that, motions, things like that, typically that. And usually the second part of that, you may learn electromagnetism, which is deal with electricity, magnetism, something of that sort. And these are the most critical core part of it. And other than that, it also involves deal with the heat. This is called the thermodynamics. And there is going to be waves. You know what the waves are: sound waves, sea waves, etc., etc. And the waves. There is a fluid dynamics. Fluid is like water, air, things like that. So these pretty much, and after then beyond that, there are many other things developed, but these are pretty much the core part as at the high school level at least. And then we're going to the chemistry. Chemistry, when you talk about normally somebody has a chemistry between each other, you know what it means. It's something, the chemistry at the school level, high school level of chemistry, when you talk about it, there's a lot of stuff too, but in the unification manner, I'm just going to briefly mention the following. Chemistry, the building block of chemistry is basically consisting of three parts. One is a ratio. Ratio is basically proportion. And the second one is moles. Moles is all the consistent chemistry. For instance, when you talk about H2O, 2 hydrogen and 1 oxygen, 2 hydrogen and 1 oxygen, here the ratio between hydrogen and oxygen is 2:1, for instance, molecular level. And this is the mathematical the core part of chemistry up in high school and the college general chemistry level and even beyond. And finally is a periodic table. So when you do the high school chemistry or general chemistry in college, if you know mathematically you have to be proficient in ratio, which you apply to molecular intersection, electrical properties, things like that for moles. And the periodic table, if you understand that, I would say you pretty much well done with the 70% of it. And this is basically a big map of what's going to be. Of course, I have to go zoom in more detail for 10 hours for this, 10 hours for this, 10 hours for this. Eventually, for now, for your benefit, I brought up the just big map of how it's going to be organized. Okay, so entire more than 100 years, whatever 150 hours, 200 hours of your studying in each year for high school freshman or sophomore year level will be done in 10 hours, done in 10 hours, done in 10 hours, and this is the map.